On today's episode of This Must Be the Place, we are going to talk about what is an open house? Do open houses matter? What's the difference between a seller and a buyer at an open house? I don't know. Maybe this guy knows.
I know.
We're going to talk about St. Anthony, Maine, and Nicollet Island. We are going to talk to my buddy Abdirahman Warsame, who runs Generation Hope Now Minnesota, which is a nonprofit dedicated to destigmatizing addiction within the Somali community. And we're going to have a little BooMTiMeS, right? Other than that, nothing.
This must be the place. Yeah, this must be the place. Ain't no time to waste. Ain't no time to waste. So whether you in Minneapolis or Saint Paul, Bloomington to Maple Grove, from the east side to the west side, down south to way up north, let me hear you say, this must be the place. Yeah, this must be the place.
Hello and welcome to This Must Be the Place, the Twin Cities only real estate and real estate adjacent podcast where one of the hosts
Better be good.
has a group text thread where last week somebody in the group text mentioned Thanksgiving and mentioned something about open house style. So that host showed up to Thanksgiving, spread their signs all around, turned all the lights on, brought a sign-in sheet, plopped down by the front door and stared outside, wistfully praying, hoping anybody would show up. Isn't that what you do at an open house?
That was a very long,
Okay, again, inside baseball,
The
people.
only podcast where we do Thanksgiving open house style. What does that mean, you might ask?
That means we put signs out.
And hope that people show up. See, it's like quicker. You know what I'm saying?
All right,
Get to
we'll workshop it.
Jeez.
All right, today, speaking of open houses, today we are going to talk about open houses. If you've ever purchased a home,
Never.
nope, me neither. If you have ever sold a home,
Nope, not. Nope.
even if your neighbor has sold a home, you've probably checked out an open house, and they are very common, ubiquitous in real estate transactions. It's part of every almost every transaction, not every transaction.
We're just jumping right into the real estate, huh?
Jumping right
real
in.
estate out the way.
Yeah, we're getting it out of the way.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay,
We're going to talk about open houses briefly.
Okay.
Okay, so
Brevity.
Oh, shit. Okay. As a seller, when you sell your house,
Yes.
you have an option, and it is a separate document that you sign with whoever is representing you to help you sell your house, an open house visitation agreement where you sign off and you say, hey, this is my realtor. He's representing me trying to sell my house. I'm going to let him or her or them hold an open house, and this is what is going to happen at the open house. So, why is this important for a seller if you're selling a home?
I don't know.
Why do you think?
Can't
even fathom
I can't fathom why
a
an
plus
open
or a
house.
minus.
Well, just spitballing it for the first time ever in history that I'm thinking about this. I would imagine an open house is important for a seller because you want to drive eyeballs and drive traffic to your property, right? The way to get somebody in the door, obviously, like there are a couple things you can control, right? You can't control. You can't control location.
Nope.
It is where it is, right?
Yep.
You can control kind of what the house looks like and how you declutter it, how you, I don't want to say stage it as in like bringing a stage, but how you like set it up for pictures and everything else. And you can control the price, what you price it at, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of that is hopefully a way or a vehicle to get people in the door of the house, right? So they can see it in person, create an emotional connection, fall in love with the house, and want to purchase it, right? And an open house, at least in today's climate, I shouldn't say at least, in today's climate especially, is a way for the public to be able to come into the house, create that emotional connection, but not necessarily have to be represented by a realtor or under a buying agreement, a buyer's representation agreement at this point.
Mhm.
So I think it's even more important nowadays to drive people to the house.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree.
And there are two types of open houses too, by the way, right? There's the brokers open and
Enlighten
the
me.
public open.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Yep.
So brokers open, you know, when you work at a bigger brokerage like Andrew and I, the most agents in the Twin City belong to Coldwell Bankers. So when we hold the brokers open for our agents, we're driving the word to other agents to let possible buyers know, hey, we got a great property. You've seen it. You know what your buyers are looking for. You know if it checks all the lists. And now you can kind of get your buyers in there like that. And then there's the public open, which is like Saturday, 12 to 2, pop some signs out,
Yep.
get a neighbor to
Pour
walk
some
through.
champagne.
Yep.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Yep.
Champagne. Big
Oh,
time.
yeah.
Big time
yeah.
it,
I got to
man.
big time it, man. Yeah.
I,
We do crudités. We do champagne. We got Prince music in the
you
background.
go Prince, you just all year round Prince, or do you switch it up?
I switch it up, but Prince is my go-to. But you got to be careful with Prince because
It's too
lyrically it gets a little racy
I think
at
you're saying
times.
it's too funky for some
It's
people.
not too well. It is too funky for some
I
people.
go with Yacht Rock. For a while, I was
Oh.
like Tribe Called Quest,
yeah.
D'Angelo.
Yeah.
Like I was trying to do, like I was
Erykah
trying to
Badu,
walk
that's what I
the
used to
old
do.
like '90s rap R&B vibe. But I felt like it not turned off, but I didn't get the reaction
Yeah.
that like a good old
Michael
Hall
McDonald.
and Oates record
Yeah.
or a little Michael Jackson PYT or something is gonna,
Yeah.
just bring a little vibe into the
Get the
into
Dan in
party.
there.
There you go.
Steely Dan people, come on.
I fast forward the Steely Dan stuff.
Oh, I love Steely Dan. Anyway, BooMTimeS later, there is a great Yacht Rock documentary out right now.
Yeah, there
just
is.
dropped. I watched
sure.
it. It's spectacular. Anyway,
Back to open houses.
back to open houses. Let's land the plane.
Yeah.
So for sellers, yes, like Casey said, it's all about getting eyes and visibility on the property.
Yep.
You're going to get a lot more eyes and visibility on the property if you add that extra layer. This is just
Yeah.
another tool in your toolbox as you're selling your house, where people don't have to make a specific appointment with their agent to schedule a time to see the house. Anybody can come see the house. Now, on the flip side, for a buyer, why would an open house be beneficial or advantageous? I mean, I want to get your opinion too, but the first thing I think of is like when you're first talking to your significant other or whatever you're doing to get the gears going in your head and you want to kick some tires, you haven't talked to a lender yet, you haven't talked to an agent yet. You just kind of want to see what's out there.
Yep.
You're just dipping your toe in the water.
Yep.
And that's a great reason to go check out an open house because not only are you going to see what the market's telling us in terms of like, what does $400,000 buy in this neighborhood?
Yeah, for sure.
But also, you'll get to meet an agent that is either the listing agent who's representing the house and representing the seller, who will know that house better than anybody but the seller.
Yep.
Or you'll meet an agent from within the listing agent's brokerage who's hosting the open house for that agent, who should know that.
Who should know that?
Who should know that, but won't know as much as the agent
for sure.
because they haven't spent
For
as
sure.
much time with the seller. But it's also a good way to interview potential buyer representation.
It's an
because
auditioning process.
It's an auditioning process. Yeah.
right?
And obviously you want to check the competency box and the vibe box, and an easy way to do that is to go to an open house.
You want to check the preparedness box too, because the reality is, as someone who hosts other people's listings,
Mm-hmm.
if I show up unprepared and I don't know anything about the house, and someone says, "Hey, what year was this built?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Ooh, let me,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?" Like,
Yeah.
Or if I'm like, "Oh, this is 1910, but all these updates here's a list."
Yeah.
And right, if you're on top of it, then you can kind of see what you're dealing with, and what you might expect from that person if they work with you. In addition, you're gonna get a feel for the neighborhood and just walking down the street and just the overall feel of the house, which pictures aren't gonna do it. You know what I
No.
mean? My wife and I used to drive around on Sundays in particular, just all the neighborhoods that we thought we would like, and just try to stop into open houses sort of randomly just to get a feel for the area. And it's like a zero commitment way to explore. You know?
Yeah.
And let's even take a step beyond buyers for a second. You own a house, right? You want to see what other things are happening in your neighborhood, how people renovated a certain house. There's a cute Tudor revival down the street that's almost the same exact thing as mine, and they did some renovations last year to get it on the market. I want to go check that out to see
Yes, sir.
kind of what they did and how it's priced, so I can get an idea of maybe.
When you talk to
what I
any
could do.
realtor, I mean, what?
Yep.
Like, what would you say? 30% of people that stop by an open house are neighbors or people that live in the area that don't necessarily aren't interested in that house in particular to buy, but you know, just for comps or whatever.
Yeah, and I tell people too, like the reality is I've been to almost as many open houses as a neighbor as I have as an agent or a buyer. You know what I mean? Like it's just something that you do. So if you're a neighbor, stop by anyway. A lot of realtors will canvass the neighborhood anyway and say, look, if you know somebody that you love and want to be your neighbor, your family members, friends, whatever, like this is going on the market. We're holding a special open 30 minutes before the actual public open just for neighbors.
Yep.
So it can go both ways, but it is an important tool for agents. It's an important tool for sellers for sure to get eyeballs and traffic through their property because that's what sells it. And then at the end of the day, for buyers, it's a no commitment way to go see some houses and narrow down what you're looking for.
100%.
Yeah.
TLDR, remember that?
Yes.
Important tool in your toolbox, whether you're buying or selling, and something that you should definitely consider.
Yeah. All right.
And now, This Must Be the Place presents Neighborhood Watch.
I do want to jump into El Neighborhood Watch.
Okay.
Yeah. We're going to be talking about technically when you break down the neighborhood not demographics, but geography is called the St. Anthony West neighborhood that we're going to be talking about. Casey specifically wanted to talk about this one today because one of his kids goes to school in this area. We both obviously know the area very well. What did you want to talk about specifically about St. Anthony West, St. Anthony, Maine, Nicollet Island, what have you?
It was more Nicollet Island. Like St. Anthony was always a place where my wife and I, over the years, when we started dating, she went to the University of Minnesota and lived.
So did my wife.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe they went at the same time. Maybe
Golden
they know each other.
Gophers.
Yeah.
Maybe they were roommates and we don't know this. And they don't know that we don't know it.
Wow.
Our
wives don't know each other yet.
No. So, yeah.
They've met.
Yeah. So we would kind of walk down there from her apartment or do a date
great
night
first
there.
date area.
Yeah, just all along the water there, cobblestone and brick streets, and on the island itself you can explore. And as I became older and had more friends, we got a chance to go to a wedding on the island in a house in the back there, and I remember just being amazed that this existed in the city. Not only in the city, but literally like a legitimate stone's throw from downtown. You got a cannon for an arm, you can make that throw over the Mississippi. Probably not, but might get close.
I can.
So I wanted to talk about Nicollet Island, and then it just so happens that my son is going to De La Salle this year, which is on the island. So, and he took a history class right off jump first day, and he was like, "Oh, did you know that there was a sawmill? And did you know that there was a brothel outside the sawmill where people
Kids today are learning about brothels?
Could get off work and apparently relieve some stress,
I guess,
and work a double maybe."
Yeah.
So I like the history of it, and so I wanted to talk about that. So originally, obviously, like all land around here, this was native land, Ojibwe, Dakota. There was a treaty in 1837 that basically sold, and sold is a relative term, you know, pennies on the dollar, the island to European settlers. First house was built around 1849. First bridge over the Mississippi River ever was the St. Anthony Bridge, because at that point in time, St. Anthony was a different city than Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they decided to build a bridge from St. Anthony to Minneapolis, that was the first ever bridge. First ever railroad crossing over the Mississippi River was on St. Anthony, was on Nicollet Island. Like you said, there was a sawmill there. There was probably in the late 1800s, 1870s-ish. It was one of the wealthier neighborhoods within the Twin Cities Metro, or what we think of as the Twin Cities Metro now. So you got a lot of cool houses that were at least started to be built at that point in time. One comes to mind. It almost looks like an apartment complex now, or row homes. It was built in the sort of the Second Empire French style, like Victorian homes.
Cool.
And so you have the Grain Belt sign, which was one of the largest neon signs that was built in the 1940s at the time, which is an iconic sign in Minneapolis at this point. They got to work and they get that working for the Super Bowl when they had that in town. They kind of relit it.
I don't remember.
But killer sign, brings good vibes to the city.
Stone Arch Bridge.
Yeah. Stone Arch Bridge. And then in 1900, the LaSallian brothers bought a school to the island at around the time when the island was going into disrepair, right? So from the early 1900s all the way, through the 1950s and 60s, it was became one of the poorer neighborhoods in Minneapolis. And Minneapolis had been trying to turn the island into a park for like 100 years. Like it's always been like in their charter tantamount to like manifest destiny to make Nicollet Island a park.
Really? I didn't know that.
And so they've tried to do this multiple times, and it's always failed either on like a referendum via vote, or what happened is in the 70s, there was that urban renewal process going on that started in downtown, and we talked about how it kind of spread and went through the Seward neighborhood in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So at around the same time, Minneapolis Preservation Society got Nicollet Island listed on the historic registry. And then the Met Council owned it with the Minneapolis Park Board, and they were like, no, we want to turn it into a park along the whole east side of the park. And there was this sort of litigation that took place, or a fight or feud or whatever, but basically there was a deal worked out in 1983, which wound up renovating a lot of these houses and giving the residents of the island 99-year leases, basically life leases on the properties on the island. So that's pretty much what you see today are these beautiful, again, if you're into architecture and you're into Victorian, Italianate, French Second Empire,
100%, for sure.
Victorian folk, the most beautiful examples of that architecture, some of them in the Twin Cities, can be found on the island, and they're all renovated and all lovingly taken care of because that was part of the deal, right? You get this 99-year life lease, we're going to renovate your property.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, De La Salle merged with a Catholic girls' school and became a college prep school. A door and sash company became the Nicollet Island Inn. And so now you have this beautiful island in the city that a Star Tribune article, it might have just been the Minneapolis Star at that point in time, said that the biggest profession on the island was country musicians. And I found that funny because what really made me fall in love with the island.
That is objectively funny. That's hilarious.
But here's why it's kind of cool, right? So I was a musician in a former life, had a record deal, did the whole thing.
So was I. Shout out bass clarinet.
Shout out bass clarinet. That's right. You and Ryan at Two Rivers.
Game recognized game, my friend.
But my buddy Ike, rest in peace, Isaac Russell, was my bass player, my touring bass player. And he got married on Nicollet Island in one of these back lots. When I went onto the island, I imagined I was in like Cold Mountain, like the movie Cold Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was in the Victorian countryside in like the hills of North Carolina. It was the most beautiful thing ever. They got married in a field, and there were country fiddlers, and so it was funny because to me, that is what I think of on the island. When you look up to the west, you don't see a skyscraper, but you are probably less than a quarter mile from the tallest buildings in Minneapolis. but you feel like you are in the middle of the country.
That's the
And
vibe. I
That
love it
is
there.
what is so amazing about Nicollet
Yep.
Island is it teleports you to another place. And so, you know, a lot of people know it's there, but they've never driven around it or never had occasion to
Yeah,
check it out.
man.
And it's
Because it's not. I mean, you don't just get off a highway exit and you're there.
no,
Like
it's a Passover. You go on Hennepin to get across the river.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. You have to
don't-
be intentional about
Yes.
getting there, and it's super cool.
But it's worth it. You know, catch a De La Salle football game on a Friday night with the skyscrapers and the city lights in the background, and take a walk around the island, and you can walk over the old railroad bridge onto Boom Island.
Yep.
And you can just see the most gorgeous examples of Victorian architecture that the Twin Cities has to offer.
Yeah, man. You kind of hit upon something I was thinking of too when you first kind of proposed to talking about this area. Like the way you're kind of illustrating it is what I think of. I think like European,
Yeah.
Central European, even Eastern European, just like with the cobblestone
Yeah.
and the charm and the
Yes.
architecture. It's like you're in Prague or
Yes.
you're in parts of France or Italy like 100 years ago, and it's
Yeah.
its own little pocket, and it's super great, and it's great for like it's weird, but one of my memories with my ex-girlfriend, my wife. I call her my ex-girlfriend because technically it's true.
This chick I used to date.
Yeah, it's true. She's my ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go down there, and at the time, Prochna was there, which is like legendary. If you know, Prochna, and then the movie theater's there. It's like
So you're on the St. Anthony Main side now,
now I'm on the St. Anthony Main side,
which
yes.
is like an extension, right?
Yes.
Which is why it's so friggin' amazing. Like, I wish I went to a school like that in high school. Man, I'd get off school, hang
Yeah.
out with some buddies, go
Yeah.
catch a movie at the Main or
Yeah.
Cafe Astor or
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super cool. And even just walking.
Isn't it called
along
Astor
there.
Cafe?
Yeah, Astor Cafe. Yes, it is.
Yep, I'm gonna make another notch here in my Andrew correct, Casey incorrect.
Yeah, but it's a very cool area. And then if you explore a little bit deeper into St. Anthony, you get like Khmer Chicks and Surdix,
Yes.
Saunders Shaker, which I don't know if you've ever been to the Saunders Shaker.
I've not.
Incredible restaurant, bar, drinks and burgers, top notch. Super cool little coffee shop called Fragment Coffee.
Love Fragment.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I've had really vibey place to do work.
Yeah, and I've had client meetings there
Okay.
before.
To
Actually,
impress people.
Yes, twice.
Yeah,
So if you ever want to impress somebody,
Fragment.
meeting them for the first time, Fragment is vibey and cool. And Kramarchuk's, you're totally right. Actually,
Polish deli?
call us or email us at thismustbetheplacepod@gmail.com or call us at 612-234-1889.
Yeah, you got it.
And tell us the correct way to pronounce Kramarchuk's. Because I've always called it Kramarchuk's. I've heard Kramarchuk's.
Kazmareks.
I've
heard
not,
Kazmareks.
I've not heard that. I've heard that, but I don't think that's right. But anyway,
Dude, their
let us
cherry
know.
bomb brats are the shit.
Yeah,
They're
man.
so good.
I mean, it's a rite of passage for anybody that passes through here, whether on vacation,
Yeah.
living here for a year,
Yeah.
going to school here, or
Yep.
living here forever permanently.
Best brats in the city for
Yeah.
sure. And there's a million other
And
things.
pierogies.
Yes.
I mean, you
Yes.
go there for pierogies, go there for whatever.
Yeah.
But a legendary Polish deli.
One more super cool, like local shop is called the Golden Pearl. It's
Yes, I've heard of that one.
vintage,
Never been.
Vintage clothing
vintage
store
clothing,
in
yeah.
the thrifty consignment variety. But it's bright and it feels like a very cool hip vintage shop that specializes in clothes from like the 1920s to the 1990s, which is like super Minneapolis. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
ride a friggin' unicycle down the street, dressed like a 1929 paperboy, call it a day. You know what I mean?
Yep.
South side till you die.
Yep.
So, that'd be probably northeast right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, more
Various-
so the south side.
Yeah. Having
Depends on
various
which,
kinds of mustache wax in your pockets, trying to find the right one.
I'm a fop man, goddammit. I'm using a Dapper Dan.
Dapper Dan, yes.
There it was.
George Clooney.
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right.
So
So that's what I love about this area of the city, and there's tons of you talk about the housing in particular. If you weren't lucky enough to get a 99-year life lease on the island, to live along St. Anthony, Maine, there are a lot of condos and buildings that sort of rise above the river where you get
Sure are.
gorgeous views
Yeah.
of the west bank of the Mississippi and the Guthrie and the old mills and the historic ruins. And it's an incredible place to live.
Couldn't agree more.
All right.
Good neighborhood watch.
Good neighborhood watch. Brevity?
Brevity.
Welcome to Boom Times, a segment called Boom Times, Boom Times.
All right, are we ready to talk about boom times?
Let's do a little boom times.
Let's do a little boom times.
We need a new boom time song. It needs to be like more. I'm going to start enlisting local musicians to get us some stuff.
You got local musician budget?
No, let's just do it.
Oh, okay.
We need some sponsors. You guys want to? Anybody want to sponsor us? We're gonna do this forever.
Yeah,
We're gonna
and-
have 50 plus episodes a year for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about like buying Apple stock in 1982,
This must be the place.
I mean,
It's like Bitcoin.
yeah, it's like Bitcoin. Isn't that what you call it?
I don't, that's not what I call it.
Yeah, so we'll take any, not any and all. We have to be judicious
It's
about
got to be. We're discerning.
Yeah, we are discerning. You know, we don't want can't be any geek off the street if you know what I mean. You got to earn your keep.
It's good. It's good.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right.
All right, boom times.
Let's mount up, buddy.
Let's mount up.
All right.
So we have taken a week off for the Thanksgiving holiday.
We were gonna do it.
We were going to do it. We had
But it
plans to
just-
do it Tuesday.
Didn't
and
feel right.
Yeah, it didn't feel right. And then, yeah, the turkey got in the way, and the family, and
Tryptophan.
tryptophan, and the planning ahead of time, and then
Yeah.
the,
Who's its and the what's its and
yeah, and the melting into your couch afterwards.
Yeah.
It just didn't work out. So we're here. We're back for another rousing edition of Boom Times. If you're new to Boom Times, BMTMS, books, music, TV, movies, sports,
no
vowels, all uppercase. We talk about other things too. It's kind of just whatever we've been enjoying.
You could be like books, movies. Obviously, only TV. Like we
that
could
was be moot.
That
That was be moot.
it was not even boom. I didn't
No.
even spell it.
No. All right. Well, we're gonna workshop that too.
Books only. Obviously, music and TV.
Sports.
Just yeah, I like that better.
Anyway, what do you want to talk about for Boom Times this week?
No, you had something great right off the bat.
Yeah, I want to talk about the Yacht Rock documentary on.
I haven't seen it yet, but
Max.
I've heard a good amount of things.
I just like that the subtitle is a documentary, but doc is spelled D-O-C-K, which I think is
That's right up your alley.
It's right up my
Yeah.
bad pun,
Yes.
crappy joke
Yeah.
alley. But it's great, and it doesn't shy away from the fact that Yacht Rock as a genre, as artists, basically borrowed and stole and were inspired by black musicians.
What?
'Cause- Which they weren't hiding it,
I'm
but
just joking.
but like we're talking about people like Steely Dan, Michael McDonald, the Doobie Brothers.
That's like the same. That's like an extension.
You're
of
right.
one another.
Yep. Hall
Hall and Oates.
and Oates are not Yacht Rock
Yeah, but see,
because they're from New York. Yacht Rock
no,
is.
they're Philadelphia.
You have not. Well, whatever. They're from out east. You haven't watched the documentary. The
so
documentary
they
have
narrowly
to be from
define it.
Southern California.
Oh,
Yes.
Because if you were to type in Yacht Rock on a playlist right now, you would get
You'd get the Eagles.
Michael Jackson, PYT.
Yeah.
You would get
No.
Hall and Oates, Sarah Smile.
No,
you
that's
would
not
get
Yacht Rock.
But that's what I think of all that under the umbrella.
Well,
of Yacht
you're
Rock.
wrong.
I'd be wrong. I have to see this documentary then.
But they have some great guests. It's really well done. Obviously, Questlove makes his appearance that he makes in
He's
every
like
every music documentary.
Yeah.
But they've got some really smart people that they interview, that they talk to. It's shot really well. The music's great. Michael McDonald is a mensch. I never knew how cool that guy was.
So I know you said Hall and Oates wasn't part of this.
Yeah, they're not.
I went to a Hall and Oates and Michael McDonald concert with my wife about 10, 12 years ago at the Excel. And it was the craziest shit I've ever seen in my life.
In what sense?
First of all, Michael McDonald still kills it. The dude was,
Oh, yeah.
woo, woo, woo.
Yeah.
He was killing it on the keys. And Hall and Oates opened. And Daryl Hall was up there dancing and doing his thing like he was 26, 27
Is he the black
years old.
curly hair guy?
No,
Or
that's Oates.
Oh, I'm not a Hall and Oates
That's
guy.
John Oates.
I'm a Steely Dan guy.
This is Philadelphia royalty, brother. So
I don't like him.
how do you not like Sarah Smile?
I don't
dude?
like it.
Oh my God. Anyways, he's playing rich girl, dancing around, and I swear to you, it was a reenactment of what happened probably 40 years earlier, because there were 60-some-year-old women taking off their bras underneath their shirt, swinging it around and throwing at the dude on stage.
Good
and
for
he's
them.
like almost late 60s, dancing, catching a bra on his head. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen, and it made me think that the ultimate movie that has yet to be made, that should be made, would be the origin story of Hall and Oates. Fast forward to when they're like old and going back on tour, starring Chris Kattan as
the
John
mustache
Oates,
guy?
yep, and Will Ferrell as
Daryl
Hall. Tell me that wouldn't be an amazing movie.
That would be.
Jason Bateman could be their like drummer or their manager.
You're just giving away ideas right here.
I'm telling you, it would be a hit.
Yeah, you got to lock this down so
Will.
you don't lose out any money on it.
Will, make it happen.
Yeah, he listens. That's for sure.
Anyways, that's all I got.
No, that's good. Anyway, documentary, Yacht Rock.
Sorry for hijack.
No, you didn't hijack anything, dude. That was great. What do you got to talk about?
So I haven't been doing a whole heck of a lot this past week, but my family started watching The Last of Us again because my kids tried to watch it the first time. And
Oh, I thought you meant there was a new season. I was
No,
like, how
no.
did this slip by me?
no. In preface for a new season, probably that will be hopefully coming soon.
2025, I think.
Okay.
Early 2025.
And The Last of Us was based on a video game about what would happen if fungus, particularly cordyceps, could grow and take hold in humans. And the impending apocalyptic doom,
Yeah.
post-apocalyptic doom that happens
Zombie
with
shit. I love
zombies and governments and
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
and the whole nine. And so we're watching that again. And in particular, I want to highlight episode 3, which might
Is that
have
the one
been
with Nick Offerman?
Nick Offerman, yes.
That's one of the best
and
episodes
the
of
Kiwi, I forget
TV.
his name.
I forget his name too.
But
one of the best
yes,
episodes I've ever seen.
one of the best episodes
any show.
of television
Yeah.
that has ever been made.
Totally
that
agree.
singular episode.
Yep.
And rewatching it again, it was just as impactful, just as powerful, just as moving.
Yeah.
And then the following episode, actually, when I don't wanna,
Spoiler.
yeah, I don't want. I'll spoil it. It's like 3 years old.
Yeah.
But when the older brother has to shoot the little brother, like made my daughter just like she lost it. She
Yeah.
was crying all night.
Yeah.
Really good TV show.
It's such a great show, but the fact that you brought that up, I am gonna.
By the video game.
No, I have an Xbox. You can't play it on Xbox.
Is it PS only?
I think so.
My son, I have a PS with my son. I buy it.
No, I'm gonna watch that show. I'm gonna have my daughter watch that show because she'll love it.
It's good.
I never thought about it, but anyway, yeah, that episode, the Nick Offerman episode.
Yeah.
And sorry for the other guy, I can't remember his name
Should I
either.
look it up? You got to give him a shout.
Yeah, I think they call that a bottle episode. that's like a episode of a TV show that kind of stands alone from the rest of the story arcs. And I think it's probably one of the best bottle episodes ever. Okay, while Casey's looking that up, I'm just going to talk about my last BooMTimeS. I actually made a list of many BooMTimeS because I've been apparently busier than my family would like to otherwise say. But I'm going to talk about Smitten Kitchen. Now, our first guest on our second episode, Nikki Warner, knows because we trade cookbooks. But Smitten Kitchen is a website and a line of cookbooks by this home cook in New York named Deb Perlman, who I cook all the meals at my house, and I use recipes for well, yeah, more than half. And she is, you're probably familiar with her, but if you're not, smittenkitchen.com.
Deb Perlman.
Deb Perlman.
Okay.
She makes the most delicious, relatively easy, not crazy obscure ingredients that you have to go around to like different specialty stores. She makes the recipes palatable. She's smart. She's funny. She's engaging. Anyway, I've been cooking a lot of her stuff lately, either from the website or from some of her cookbooks I have, and it's great. And I love her. And
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, she's got a family and she lives in an apartment in New York, and she's down to earth and great.
Yeah, sweet.
What else you got?
Murray Bartlett is his name.
Bartlett.
White Lotus. He's also in White Lotus, among other things.
Oh,
he's really good. So today on This Must Be the Place, we have Abdirahman Warsame. I probably butcher your name.
No, you got it. You got actually pretty good, yeah.
Who is lives in the Twin Cities.
Yep.
And we'll call you an author, an activist, a public speaker. You get into a bit on the political side through your activism, but generally you're known for your work within the Somali community for a nonprofit called Generation Hope Minnesota, which addresses addiction and some of the stigmatism that is involved within the Somali community.
Yeah.
So first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I've known you for about a year, and truly have been inspired by what you do.
Thank you, man.
Since day one.
Yeah.
Which is super weird for a 46-year-old guy to be inspired by a dude in his 20s.
Appreciate you.
But really, and I guess what I was saying earlier in the pre-conversation is that, and I don't think a lot of people understand this, but the Somali community has something built into it where the love and support that you get from your community is unlike anything I've ever seen in other communities. And I mean that from a music perspective, people from the Jewish community or Italian community or white rappers or from a certain city or whatever, right? They don't get the love and the built-in support that Somalis give their own. Within music, some of the artists that work here can drop, and within an hour, there's 400,000 views on any given social media platform.
Is that right?
Or and there's reposts and there's reaction videos to the reposts, and there's it's insane. And
excitement and love.
Yeah,
and all those things.
I think it's amazing because it fosters this sense of community that really I think is unique to the diaspora, right, of Somalia, that takes it worldwide, like we said, from the enclaves of Minneapolis to Toronto, London, Oslo, wherever. And so I found it really interesting when I first recognized that and saw kind of how it worked. And hearing about your work and what you do, and how that has been also international for you, it seems to translate beyond music. To translate into business and activism and whatever.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. I think one of the kind of good things that kind of comes out of just kind of like putting yourself out there or talking about yourself or going out on social media and just talking, because you connect with a lot of different people.
Yeah.
So I don't make music, but like I know a lot of different artists, and a lot of that kind of came from just me kind of putting myself out there, connecting with people, doing like social media, you know, content creation and art and stuff like that. And yeah, man, it's super different. You've had the opportunity to work with some of the biggest artists in the Somali community, and that's why you see stuff like that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, man.
So I worked with this guy, Soldan Sirar.
Yeah, big, huge.
And I had worked with Hash before
Hash,
that,
yep,
Hash
yep.
LTD or whatever, and some Tribal East guys. But the second I started working with Soldan,
All these other big artists started coming
all of a
in.
sudden I started getting calls from all these other big artists being like, did you do that here? Were you here? And it was incredible. And I was on a podcast a couple weeks ago with a realtor from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
He has a cool podcast, shout out Brett. And he was asking who I worked with. And so I was listing guys that I had worked with, like 50 Cent and Blue Bear and Talib Kweli. And then I was like, and some Somali dudes who you have never heard of that are probably bigger than a lot of the guys that you would assume.
Yeah.
You know, the reach on TikTok and YouTube is like insane, and it's worldwide.
Yeah, there's a huge fan base within the Somali community that is like circulates just within the Somali community.
Yeah.
Whereas you see kind of like with other artists, their fan base is kind of like spread out through just kind of a mesh or a melting pot of different ethnicities, different backgrounds all around. And so I think it's very interesting to see when you see a artist within the Somali community grow naturally, and it's within the community of itself. And so because the community, I mean, when you look at the Somali community as a whole, I think we're 20 million internationally, which is very small.
Yeah.
But because of how the system is within our community and how interconnected we all are, it's very easy for people to kind of know of you, or everybody know of each other, because everybody's so interconnected.
But that's what the support is insane, because I think if you sort of look at a percentage of like the percent of support you get versus the total percent of population, it's like far outweighs any other sort of smaller group that I've.
Do you find support, artistic support, whether it be music or whatever, poetry or art or food or whatever it is that exclusive to Somalia, or is it the countries? Do you kind of support each other, whether it's like Somaliland or Eritrea or Somalia? Is the support almost all from Somalia, or is it from other countries as well?
I think in general the idea is like Africans all kind of like connect with each other. The idea of Pan-Africanism is there. When it comes to things like music, obviously somebody who's Somali will listen to Somali music because that's the language that they understand.
Yeah.
And so for things like that, you'll see where it's like probably mostly towards people that are Somali, because the language that they're speaking is the language that they can understand.
I see.
But when it comes to, for example, like food, I mean, I grew up eating like dirawat or things like that. So a lot of different people, like in just Cedar Riverside, where it's a mesh of East African community.
What was that Somali burrito?
Oh, we ate it here, didn't we?
Yeah. It was so banging.
Was that Dig Dig?
So good.
No, you're talking about the Malawah wrap.
Yeah.
The Malawah wrap. You know how to tell me that story.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Yeah,
He
you
calls
said
it a
you-
wrap. Casey calls it a
It's
burrito.
a Somali burrito, bro.
So it's so you know crepes, right?
It's like
Yeah,
a
yeah,
breakfast
yeah.
So we
burrito.
were
Super thin.
Yep, and so we were part of Somalia was colonized by the French.
Yes.
And we were also colonized by Britain, and we also were colonized by Italy. So some of our dishes kind of originate from these countries.
Sure.
One of the things that originates from Somali dishes is crepes, which we call malawah.
Yeah.
So the malawah wrap is a dish that's a crepe, and on top of it is some food. It's like, you know, either chicken or steak or goat meat with like ranch or barbecue and some lettuce and stuff like that. They add a bunch of different things, you know, onions or whatever, and they put it up into a wrap.
So good.
And it's like a sweet and savory type of mix.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Where's the place to get that?
You can get it at
We talk-
Mashallah restaurant.
Say it one more time.
Mashallah.
Mashallah restaurant.
Yeah.
So we've fast forwarded through a whole.
Kind of jumped through a bunch of different
You know
flavors.
We
what?
did, yeah.
Can you tell us just give us a little bit of your backstory and what you do, because I think it's important for everybody out there to be hip to what you're doing in the Twin Cities and literally throughout the world.
Yeah, so I'm a person in long-term recovery. I like saying that whenever I enter into any type of conversation about myself, because I feel like when I walk the line in my life, every step is towards my own recovery, which is what allows me to grow, which allows me to thrive. It allows me to look back and be grateful for what I have, and also work harder to get to where I want to go.
Okay.
And so I'm a person in long-term recovery. Somali, born and raised here though. My mom came here in 1995. I struggled with addiction for a small period of time in my life, in comparison to my whole life. But I like to say it's what defined me. You know, my mom came here in 95. I have a big family. From my mom and dad were 6. My mom had another 2 kids, and then my dad had another 4. So in total we're 12. And so growing up, I've had always a big family, so to say. Pretty much grew up in a single-parent household. My parents divorced when I was about 4 years old.
What neighborhood you grew up in?
Cedar Riverside.
Cedar Riverside. Okay.
I moved around a lot. So I didn't technically live in Cedar Riverside my whole life.
Sure.
But my mom worked at Brian Coyle for most of my childhood.
Okay.
And so she worked at the front desk at the Pillsbury United Community Center for Brian Coyle. And so I went there for, you know, after school programs, summer programs, even on the weekends when they would be closed. Sometimes my mom would let us in the morning, and we would play in the computer room.
Okay.
And so I have, you know, vivid memories of just the whole computer lab being open, and it would just be me and my siblings, and we would just be playing mini clip, and you know.
We don't know what mini clip is.
Yeah,
We're
way
too
older
old.
than me. Yeah, man. But
Like Oregon Trail?
you know, it's just a bunch of these games that you know.
Number munchers?
Yeah.
Remember that? You're a baby.
Yeah.
It's okay.
You know, it was just a different time, and yeah, man, that's how I grew up, and you know. Growing up in a neighborhood like that, and you know, it was really, I was around my culture my whole life. But you know, even in the schools that I went to, they're predominantly East African. So I feel like I was in a bubble my whole life.
Sure.
But again, you know, I'm coming from a community who's freshly new to America. Has never really learned how to cope with their own traumas, cope with their own emotions, and early on into
So for the people who like have no historical context, right? There was civil war in Somalia. That drove a lot of people out.
Yeah, so in 1991 there was a civil war that happened after the removal of a dictator that lived in Somalia during that time period, and so once he was removed, there was a vacuum of power. And so a lot of people ended up fighting.
Warlords.
And so it was a tribal. It was a tribal conflict.
Yep.
And so a lot of people just started fighting each other, and a lot of people died. One of those who was my mom's father, my grandfather.
Sure.
And so you know, my mom was in Somalia, and the only reason why she hadn't left was because of my grandfather.
Okay.
And so she kind of went looking for him for about like 5-10 days, and he was missing for months, and they couldn't find him. And in her process of looking for him, she entered into a war zone. You know, it was a grenade that was thrown in her direction, and her companion, the friend that she was with, got blown into shreds, and the shrapnel knocked her out. And she woke up several days later in a hospital, just like shouting out her dad's name, my grandfather's name. And they let her know, your dad's dead.
Yeah.
Shortly after, my grandma and her siblings, they went to Kenya.
Okay.
And went to Dadaab, so the refugee camp.
Okay.
I believe it was Dadaab or it was another refugee camp. She then, in the refugee camp, married my father.
Okay.
Stayed there for a few years and then came to America.
Okay.
Came to Minnesota, and that's where we've lived my whole life.
Okay.
And that's the case for a lot of Somali people here.
Sure.
You know, seen a lot of war, lost a lot of people.
So a lot of second generation people like yourself, who were born here, whose parents came here between 91 and say 95, 96, whatever it is. And now kind of establishing roots, second generation, and that's kind of how you came to be where you are, just in terms of Cedar Riverside neighborhood and Generation Hope and things like that.
Yeah. So for myself, kind of growing up, I think it's different for different people in the East African community, specifically the Somali community, because there's different waves of people that migrated to America. So you got, the early 90s and the late 90s, where people were kind of coming in troves to Minnesota because they had that refugee program that was going on during that time period.
Yep.
Post 9/11, that kind of shut down up until 2007.
Okay.
And in 2007, there was a terrorist group that took over the government of Somalia for a period of time. And so they then again opened up the doors to people in Somalia. So there was a lot of people that were coming in.
A new wave.
When you say
new
they,
wave.
are you speaking of the Twin Cities and Minnesota, or are you speaking of okay?
No, the whole country.
The whole country.
The whole
Okay.
country.
Yeah.
Federally,
Okay.
they opened up. There was more openings for people to come in. So then a lot of people were coming in
Refugee
through programs.
status.
Refugee
Yeah,
status,
okay.
exactly. There's a word for it in immigration. I forgot what it was. Asylum.
Yeah,
Seeking
asylum
asylum.
seekers, yeah,
Asylum
sure.
seekers. So people came in. And a lot of people were coming in 2007, and then you see more waves later on into 2015, 16, 17.
Yep.
But mostly people came in the 90s or in the early 2000s.
Okay.
Okay.
And so for my mom, she came here in 1995. But yeah, man, pretty much I think like my childhood was very similar to a lot of people in immigrant households, where it was a lot of ruckus, a lot of kids in the house. For myself, I grew up in a single-parent household. My mom did what she could, but a lot of the times it was just me and my siblings in the house, because she's working 2 jobs,
Sure.
gone out the house most of the time.
Sure.
Have you ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
No.
So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a triangle where it talks about people in life when it comes to somebody's needs from a hierarchical standpoint. For example, somebody can't think of their purpose if they're homeless.
Sure.
Somebody can't think about a support system or love if they don't have food on their plate.
Sure.
Somebody can't even fathom or process the emotional trauma that they've been through if they don't have money in their pockets, if they're dealing with financial instability.
Basic needs have to be met
in order for people to work through.
Or if they don't feel safe.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
So the idea is that when you look at intergenerational trauma, especially looking from, even if it's case by case or looking at it from the standpoint and perspective of, immigrants coming from places of civil war, that intergenerational trauma is oftentimes more severe because of the fact of the matter that there was never a chance for these individuals to heal, these parents to heal.
Sure.
And so these coping mechanisms, these unhealthy coping mechanisms, these unaddressed mental health diagnoses, a lot of times often pass on to their children because none of those needs were ever met.
Did that manifest? I mean, I'm sorry to skip ahead here, but does that manifest into higher incidences or whatever of substance abuse within the Somali community?
When you look at our community as a whole, there's a lot of different things that I feel like kind of leads people in our community to addiction and substance abuse. One, you can consider the idea of intergenerational trauma.
Sure.
Undiagnosed trauma. You can look at when you look at addiction from a genetical standpoint. A lot of times people don't know that you can be predisposed to addiction if you have addiction in your family.
Sure.
The highest use of khat, which is a substance, a highly addictive stimulant, in Africa is in Somalia. It's one of the biggest trades in the country.
Okay.
People use it daily, and it's something that is culturally accepted.
Sure.
So when something is culturally accepted, it's not often looked at as something that's a problem.
Sure.
It's looked at as something that's like a commodity. It's
Sure.
like in the 70s when people were smoking cigarettes, they didn't see it as a problem.
Yeah.
They seen it as just something that was accepted because culturally it was accepted. Or, you see this often in Arab societies where people smoke hookah. Hookah is something that's normal. In Somalia, khat is something, or even in a lot of places in East Africa. You find it in Ethiopia, you can find it in Sudan, you can find it in Yemen. Yemen is not part of East Africa, it's part of the Arabian Peninsula, but you get the picture.
Yeah.
So when you look at things like that, this is a substance that people are highly addicted to. that's never been addressed correctly.
Sure.
And so when you look at how individuals, when you mix trauma, you mix, being predisposed to a condition like this, it automatically makes you at a higher risk of falling into addiction.
Sure.
You utilize that with all of the different issues that people deal with in this day and age, being an immigrant, seeing your parents struggle, growing up in disenfranchised or marginalized communities.
Yeah.
It is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And you find so many different people struggling with addiction because of it.
Yeah.
As of recent, with the opioid epidemic, you're dealing with such a highly addictive substance.
Yep.
That's 1,000 times more addictive than heroin.
Sure.
That
Talking about fentanyl?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's big in the Somali community?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you were addicted.
I was addicted
right?
myself. Yeah, I was addicted
Through
to fentanyl.
COVID. I'm sure COVID had something to do with that, the isolation.
So I got sober in 2019, right before COVID.
Right before. Okay.
I was struggling with addiction from 2016
Okay.
to 2019.
Okay.
So I struggled with addiction with fentanyl, predominantly mostly opiates, but I kind of dabbled and dabbled in everything. But my DOC was fentanyl. So I struggled with fentanyl.
How long have you been working within the community now to combat not only the addiction or offer resources for people that are addicted, right? But to get at the root causes, the unaddressed trauma and other things.
It's been 5 years.
Okay.
So I got sober June 16, 2019. The first event we held in our community was on September 28th, 2019. So it was about 3 months into my recovery.
Okay.
And a lot of that had to do with, I had a very close friend of mine who we got sober around the same time. He got sober 2 months before me, who had relapsed and died 7 days after coming back to America. He was gone from America for a period of time.
Yep.
And as soon as he came back, he died. I had already kind of an idea that I wanted to help people that were kind of dealing with or struggling with what I was struggling with. Very early into my recovery, a few weeks into it, because I had never experienced such a sickness that I did during this time period where I was struggling with withdrawal.
Okay.
And I had no idea what Suboxone, methadone, even naloxone, which is an anti-agent for overdoses, and I had overdosed several times. I had no idea the terminology for these, medicines and anti-agent that's used to help people that are struggling with addiction.
Yeah, which probably means that a whole huge portion of
people
they don't know either.
Exactly.
Right.
And so it's really what pushed me to kind of explore and see what can I do to help individuals in my community. But at this time I was kind of just in a talking stage where I was talking to a friend of mine, talking to my brother, talking to a mentor. But I had no plans to do anything. I was like, let me get off my feet first.
So fast forward 5 years.
Yeah.
What's it look like now? Are you're at the community level, obviously.
Yeah.
Right? Are you at the state representative level, political level? Are you what is the outreach look like? What does the program look like? Who does it affect? What's the progress?
Was Generation Hope a thing in 2019?
Yeah, so we came up with the
name. It had already existed, or
so we didn't become a legitimate nonprofit until 2021.
But this was your brainchild, though, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, okay, that's what I was kind of getting at. Okay, so that was your idea. Okay, great.
So the thing was, when we first got into this work, we knew we wanted to do kind of nonprofit work, but just kind of giving you the framework or just the basic. I had no clue even what a 501c3 was. I didn't know what a nonprofit was, how to develop a nonprofit, what a grant was, how to run anything like this. Wow. I was 21 years old. Yeah. I was only 3 months sober. I had never had worked at a nonprofit or had any type of educational background. I just really wanted to help my community. And the same thing with the co-founder, one of my closest friends, and our other friends that we kind of invoked this idea and hey, we need to do this. We had not a clue, not a damn dollar a dime, a supporter. It was just really much an idea. And in the beginning, it was just really just like, I remember we used to wake up like 5 a.m. I would call my friend, he would call his friend. It was like a few of us that were sober, and we were like, okay, this guy wants to go to treatment, this guy wants to go to the clinic, this guy, we got to take him to detox. And we would all give each other tasks, and every single day we would get calls, and we would pick up somebody and stay with them until from the moment they do intake to the first dose, and then getting them into treatment. And we would do all of this off of our own time.
So you were getting your hands, like literally you were getting your hands dirty.
Yeah, we didn't have a clue of what else to do.
Yeah, no, that's...
we didn't know what else to do. We didn't have, but very early on when we first did our first couple events, there was a lot of news press and coverage around it. So we got interviewed by, CARE 11, WCCO, Fox 9, Star Tribunes, Sahan Journal. There was a lot of different...
Love Sahan Journal.
Yeah,
He's
I know
great.
Mukhtar. He's a great guy.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So I've known him for a while. And so when we first did that, they all came out, and there was a lot of elected officials that were interested. But, at the same time, there's only so much that an elected official can do for you. We're not a nonprofit. We don't have any... but it really did set the stage for a lot of different organizations, entities, treatment centers to really get into this work. Now, before this, there was only one one organization treatment center. This guy by the name of Yusuf Shafi that had a treatment center that was designated to be culturally specific or work with the East African community. And when he started, I think it was like 2015, and he's a good friend of mine, and I talked to him about this, and he told me, yo, man, when he first started the treatment center, man, people used to call him like crazy, like, yo, this is not a problem. Because the thing is that stigma is so real in our community that even when somebody dies, they tell you, hey, they died in their sleep. They died of a heart attack. They don't even acknowledge it. Yeah, they don't acknowledge it. They don't say that the person really died from what they died from. We've had instances where somebody wants to go to treatment. They want to change, but their family's like, you cannot go to treatment. Is
that still the case, or are you finding that you're making inroads into that?
Yeah, we're making inroads 100%, but this is like 5 years ago, Or even in the instance of this guy, he's telling me he started 9 years ago, and he's telling me that he would have guys that would go up to him, or they would be even court mandated to go to treatment, but then when his family finds out that the owner of the treatment center is Somali, they would say, no, you can't go here.
Crazy.
Because of the fear that he would say something to different people in the community, because we're so interconnected that if you tell one person one thing, everybody knows.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like a game of telephone.
Yeah.
But people don't understand the idea of HIPAA.
So that's a double-edged sword. We were talking about how it works for good in terms of music marketing and everything.
But it's also, there you go,
but it's also, that's really interesting.
So is that part of the crux of what Generation Hope does, is to try to provide awareness to destigmatize the community?
So it's I would say it's what we were birthed on, Okay. When we first started, our biggest goal was to educate people. So we do things like naloxone training. We would do workshops with parents, workshops with mosque leaders, talk at different events, post a lot of videos. In the middle of COVID, when we couldn't even do events, I posted a video of myself overdosing because I wanted to show the community what it looks like. Because there was like, in the month of March, there was like 6 people that died in our community, and there was not even a beep, like nobody said anything, was silent.
Yeah, and that's not helpful at all.
So the video had a lot of shock value. A lot of people, were so surprised that this is what it looks like, and nobody's ever seen an overdose. And I had a friend of mine who had went to treatment, who I had known for years, who had died in March, and he was one of those 6 people that had died in the community. I was so pissed. And during COVID, you couldn't even attend that funeral. And because I knew his cousin, they told me the details, and I came to the funeral because they were only inviting family. Gotcha. And I seen him get buried with a bulldozer. They picked it up, all the dirt, and just put it on him. And it crushed me, and I was like, and I was dealing with something called survivor's guilt at this time period. And I wrote a poem about it, and I released it, and alongside the video, you see me overdosing. And it's a actual real video that my friend took of me in 2017, where I overdosed, my first time overdosing. He didn't have a clue that I was overdosing. He just thought that I was just high and I was just tweaking out. So when I posted that video, created a lot of shock value, a lot of emotion, and people really got the chance to feel what it looks like, for somebody to struggle with addiction and really humanize the topic. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because you just see somebody right there just dying in front of you. Yeah. I flatlined that day. And so,
where do you hope this goes? Where do you hope the work continues? Like,
Yeah.
is there an end game?
yeah.
Like, is the end game to almost try to eradicate addiction within the Somali community, or is it more of a you're never going to eradicate the addiction, but we're going to provide avenues to deal with the trauma and the generational stuff and the stigmatism? Like, what's the future of this work look like for you?
So
And is it local, or does it start to then go
Yeah.
worldwide? Like you?
Yeah, so originally when we first got into the work, our biggest goal was education, and very quickly we learned that there's more work that needs to be done than just educating people. And so we started providing support services, peer recovery support. And I've worked with the city of Minneapolis. I've worked with Nacho, which is a huge organization that does harm reduction and research. I've worked with the University of Minnesota and the MDH, and when I first started, working with a lot of these entities, and we were working on a lot of different like research and surveys, and really just kind of diving deep into to show data-driven results, and
Sure.
to really see, okay, well, what is the issues and what can we provide?
Sure.
And really just kind of getting into analytics and things of that sort. I think what I started realizing first and foremost is, there is so many different problems within our community, but just in general, in recovery as a whole, in Minnesota, 80% of funding goes towards treatment.
Okay.
95% of people relapse within their first year of recovery.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people look at treatment as the end-all, be-all for somebody that's in recovery. I know myself, and just through experience of working with so many different individuals, that's not the case. So many people go to treatment and they relapse right after they get out, or they relapse within a few months, or they relapse even later on in life. And a lot of times the reason why is because people don't have the support that they need post-treatment, or they don't have the support that they need prior to treatment.
Sure.
So what happens is there's this cyclical state where people are in this perpetual state where they're coming into treatment, relapsing, coming back to treatment, coming to treatment, relapsing, coming back to treatment. It's so cyclical, and there's no nothing that is offered as an alternative. And so what we've been really focused on is creating a recovery ecosystem, or an ecosystem of recovery support services to help somebody not only stay sober, but become essentially independent. Because I think the thing is that when you're in treatment, which is something that's great for you, you get all of the support services that you need, and you get the tools necessary that you can utilize post-treatment. But when you're done, you don't have any type of crutch or any type of thing to kind of taper off of in terms of support. So there isn't a built-in efficacy model that is meant to help this person sustain or have a long-term independence. They get out and they kind of relapse, and that's why the relapse rates are so high.
It seems like a misallocation of resources, right? Like, we should be with many things, we should be putting our resources towards prevention ahead of time, and then afterwards, after treatment or whatever.
That's a way larger societal discussion.
You're right. But I was gonna ask too about, like, on a governmental level, is like, I don't know if you know Omar Fateh at all?
I do. I know
you do?
Very well, yeah.
Okay. But like, he seems like a very qualified candidate. I don't know if you know him. He's running for mayor of Minneapolis.
No, I was going to ask when this guy is going to start running for something.
Yeah, but like, if Omar Fateh for some reason becomes mayor of Minneapolis, do you think that there would be, since he's Somali, correct?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
There would be kind of more attention paid to this, rather than if things are going as they currently are with the current mayor?
I think he would be a great candidate to advocate for the community. He sits right now on the Human Services Committee, and he's one of the reasons why fentanyl test strips, which is equally important.
Yes.
When it comes to how many different people are overdosing from mistaking the wrong drug, something that they didn't intend to take. There's a lot of people that die from overdosing because they take the wrong opiate.
Yeah.
They're intending to take a Valium or a Percocet or Oxycontin, but they don't know it's fentanyl. And so what fentanyl test strips allow you to do is test the drug to make sure that there's no fentanyl in it, which was actually considered paraphernalia just 2 years ago.
Sure.
Yeah. And
test strips were?
Yeah, the test strips, yeah.
Yeah, it's that's Yeah.
That's right. I read that about
interesting.
him. That's fantastic. That's kind of something that he was really focused on and then got to the finish line on to see it through. That's great.
I literally, I mean, I know for a fact I could sit here and talk to you all day about this, among many other things.
Yeah.
But I do, unfortunately, have to pick up my son from some different get him to basketball practice.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But I would love to let you make the people that are watching or listening on podcasts aware of where they can get a hold of you, or I want to plug your book on Amazon, From Addict to Advocate.
Yeah.
It's an on audio book as
I
well.
feel like we didn't even scratch
I know.
the
I was
surface.
going to
'cause we
ask.
had such a good conversation.
I was going to start asking about the book.
They're literally, this is the problem that we run into on this podcast all the time.
Yeah.
Every week we're like, we're going to keep this one short.
Yeah.
And every week we're like an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Because there's no way, like, we have such interesting people.
That's the
on.
thing. Is
Yeah.
if we did keep it short, it would probably mean that the guest we had didn't have
Yeah,
a
it
whole
was
lot
stupid,
to say,
like-
which
Yeah.
would be fine. But
No,
it's-
because I know that you're only scratching the surface. Like, we really could get into.
I just want to say shout out to Casey because that book that he's talking about, we did the audio book right here actually in the studio.
And what's the
last
book
year.
called again?
From Addict to Advocate.
From Addict to Advocate. You can also go to generationhopemn.org to check out more of the work that Abdirahman is doing. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, you got it right.
Thank you.
And if you are in Minneapolis, I promise you, you're in the Twin Cities, and we got some listeners in Norway.
Oh man.
We do.
And South America.
Oh, man.
So if you are
Two
local,
listeners in Norway.
That's
I
amazing.
promise you, remember the name, Abdirahman Warsame, because this young man is not only doing meaningful, important work that is affecting
Impactful too.
impactful work that's affecting people every day in their everyday lives. But I truly think, man, from the moment I met you, that I think that you are meant for bigger things, man. And,
Thank you, man.
I'm happy to sit back and watch the journey, or help sound the, sing the praises as much as I can, because
Thank you, man.
Because what you do is very important, and I've learned a lot about Somali community from you and a lot of your boys.
Yeah, man. Thank you
that
so
come
much.
through here, and it's pretty amazing.
I'm really happy that they invited me here that day because none of this
Well,
would
now
happen.
we didn't get to talk about your book, so you're going to have to come back and talk about your book.
It's poetry, right?
Yeah,
It's like
it's
a book
poetry.
of poems that really
Yeah.
it takes you through
Yeah.
from his addiction.
Yeah.
Through
Advocacy.
being advocacy for that,
sure.
and it gets personal.
Yeah, man. It was. So we had some great times in here, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you. Is there any last imparting thoughts you'd like to?
I just want to say thank you so much for having me. Hopefully we have part 2, but I really think
Yeah, we'll have part. If you're willing, we
most
will
definitely,
love it.
most definitely.
At some point.
I think this is a great podcast. Everybody give this a listen. Check out From Addict to Advocate. You can check out our website. Volunteer and donate at generationhopemn.org. www.generationhopemn.org. You can check out our programs. I don't know what else to.
Can you give a quick answer here?
Yeah.
Because this is something he was wondering about.
Yeah.
And now I'm wondering about
Yeah.
it. So, Somali community is predominantly Muslim.
Yeah.
Sunni Muslim, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in that culture, you can't own a mortgage unless.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know anything about that? How Somalis obtain mortgages? Home loans?
There's something called Sharia compliant financing.
Okay.
So there's there's a scholar committee that every country has. Like
Okay.
there's a Northern American Council of Imams, and they wrote out an entire. It's called a fatwa, which fatwa is basically like a
decree.
jurisprudence.
Yeah.
Using basis on the Quran and
Sure.
something we use called a hadith, which is the sayings of the Prophet. It's
Okay.
like there's a whole science behind it, but pretty much there is something that's Sharia compliant or compliant with our Islamic laws and practices, where you can obtain loans and it's not considered interest. So yeah, so a lot of banks do it actually.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's especially banks that are located in areas where there's a huge Muslim presence, like in New York, Dallas, SoCal. You'll find a lot of
So
places
you
that
can
do it.
obtain a mortgage
Yeah.
if you go through the right
Yeah.
bank or whatever. So, it's not haram, right? Is that
Yeah,
what it's
yeah.
called?
So I don't know too much about it, but what I do know is that obviously the reason why banks do loans with interest is so that they make a profit.
Sure.
And so technically through Sharia compliant loans, there isn't interest there, but there is a way where there creates incentive for a bank to give the loan that doesn't necessitate interest.
Sure.
So I don't know too much about it. I don't own a home.
Sure.
But I do know that there's ways to work around it.
Do you
and
know
a
who
lot
can
of
help
Muslims
you
do.
own a home?
Oh yeah, yeah.
These guys right here.
You're a realtor too, yeah. That's right. Yeah, man. Yeah, no, 100%.
Well, that's interesting. I was wondering about that. what you
Yeah,
said.
yeah.
So
I was curious too.
it's interesting. There's workarounds and
Yeah, there are Sharia compliant. There's a huge
Okay.
Muslim community here. You find a workaround, you'll find a lot of clients. 100%. People are
Well, we're
always
not
buying.
farming for clients for
Yeah.
sure. we're more curious as to how that would work.
I'm
Yeah, but that's
farming for
even
clients. I don't know what
I
you're
figure.
talking about. I'll take what I can get.
Dude, thank you so much for coming by today.
100%, man. You guys.
Thank you so
you got
much.
any questions? This must be the place pod at gmail.com, 612-234-1889.
Yep.
And Abdirahman Warsame
Yep.
from Addict to Advocate.
Yep.
Andrew and I will be back next week.
Yep.
And we will take you up on part 2 of this.
Yes,
do it.
We'll talk
But-
about the book. And we'll dig deeper into everything.
I
would
always
love to.
plug these experiential type things.
Yeah.
I say part 2 is at, where's the restaurant?
Oh, mashallah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With a Somali burrito.
Oh, yeah. I'll bring them. I'll
you
bring
gonna
them.
bring 'em?
I'll
Okay.
bring them, or we can go there too.
All right, man.
Got
All
it.
right.
Sounds good.
Appreciate
All
you
right,
so
peace,
much, man.
Thank you so
Thanks
much. brother.
again.
Till next week.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of This Must Be the Place. We'll be back next week with another neighborhood and
Another guest, another topic, some more boom times.
Yep.
See you next week.
This must be the place. Yeah, this must be the place. Ain't no time to